Hey guys, how's it going? This is Crazy Dog. I just wanted to make this quick video because there's been some specific updates that have happened, and so I wanted to update you on that. If you've been following me on Twitter, you already know that I've actually updated my valuation. And so in this video, there's three things I'm gonna talk about. Number one, I'm gonna talk about revisions to my original estimates based on new information. Number two, I'm gonna talk about what exactly is this D-Day that's happening and why I'm 90 to 95% confident it's gonna happen. And number three, I'm gonna talk about what happens if the D-Day actually doesn't happen. So let's get into the numbers right away. As you can see, the numbers are a little bit different. I have two ranges that I wanted to emphasize. The target price I have updated to 46 to 52. The acquisition price I've targeted from 40 to 46. Now again, the numbers could go a lot higher depending on the demand, but these are my new numbers. There's two main pieces of information that's led me to these new numbers. Number one is something called the 2021 dilution. So basically in 2017, you can see that Magnachip actually offered some senior notes at 5%. And this was in the amount of 75 million that actually came up in value a little bit. If you're not sure what a note is, basically when we think about loans, I go to the bank and I want to buy a house. I pay money every month. They give me money and I pay them back every month in the form of cash. With notes, it's a little bit different. When I offer a note, instead of giving back cash later, I give them the option to actually convert that into the equity amount. And so in this situation, these notes actually converted probably at the last week of February, I'm guessing. And the value of the notes was about $83 million as announced in their most recent 10K. And so the shares that were converted or diluted in our situation was about 10 million. And so that puts the dilution amount at about $218,000. And so if we look back at the outstanding shares, I think we were at about 35 million before. Now we're up to 46 million. That will put the market cap at about $991 million. So that means that the company is worth, at least on paper, instead of the 700 something million, now it's worth about 900 million. It affects the individual stockholders because instead of having 1/10 of the pie, now I have 1/11, 1/12. The other part that I have no longer to include in my evaluations was the Korean discount. Now, originally the Korean discount was a 30% discount that I put in because that's normally how Korean companies were traded at compared to their counterparts. But in this situation, the reason I removed it is because Korean discount is actually a reflection of the Korean consumers' behaviors, not necessarily on the company itself. Especially in this situation, let's say Magnachip gets acquired by Synaptics or SK Hynix. Essentially, their products are just going to be integrated in. It wouldn't really be fair to discount the price of the company just because of Korean consumer behavior when the company itself would be absorbed by a larger company. And so again, once more to emphasize, the new target price that I'm placing on the acquisition is between 40 and 46, and the actual target price that we're looking at pre-dividend is 46 to 52. The other analyst who has placed a valuation on this company has placed it at 41 to 46, although he thinks the value could be significantly higher. And if we compare it to our numbers, it's actually spot on. My acquisition price is between 40 and 46. And so number two, D-Day may be this week. So what am I talking about? So again, I previously reported that a Korean news source has reported that MX is on the market and is currently on the third stage of M&A. The important thing is the information has not yet been confirmed, but the key thing is actually on the same day, Magnachip reported that they're going to be taking part in some investor conferences on the 11th and the 12th, which is Thursday and Friday, and on the 15th and 16th, which is this coming Monday and Tuesday. Now the key thing is it's not a guarantee, right? They actually haven't confirmed the reporting, but just based on my estimates alone, I think there's a 90 to 95% chance that this is actually true. And these are my reasons why. Number one is the circumstances. This is the perfect time for MX to sell because, like I mentioned last time, there is a huge shortage in semiconductors right now, specifically in the 200mm fabs. And again, I'm not gonna go deep into it because I did talk about it in the last video, and if you want to learn more, please watch that video. But this is the greatest demand that we will ever see in 200mm fabs ever in the history of our universe. And so therefore, they're in a perfect position to use that as leverage to ultimately find a buyer. The other main reason is OLED. As I mentioned in my first video, OLED is about to take off and come to the masses, and so they're perfectly positioned to benefit from this expansion because of their history of being in OLED since 2003 and also their extensive portfolio of IP. In terms of the semiconductors, this is the equivalent again of selling water in the Sahara, and in terms of the OLED, this is the similar of being given the opportunity to buy Tesla right before the EV boom. If there is ever an opportunity to sell this company, this is probably the best time. Number 2 is history. When we look at history, the last time that Magnachip was selling something was their Fab 4 factories that I mentioned last year. But the way it came out was interesting. Magnachip reported that something may be going on, and then interestingly enough, this news article came out saying that the deal is pretty much done, and just 13 days later, Magnachip actually confirmed that the sale was going through. And so history tells us this is normal behavior on the part of Magnachip. Number 3, the reason I feel confident is because I looked at the history of the reporter that reported. Is he somebody that we've never heard of before? And so if we look at this report, it's actually reported by someone named Kang Tu-sun. Now personally, I've never heard of him before, but when I started researching him, I realized that he had over 2,000 articles dating back to 2016. In addition, he's made lots of exclusive reporting that's been right. For example, he was one of the first ones in exclusive reporting that KakaoTalk was gonna buy a company called MyValid. This was done on the 29th. Sure enough, the very next day it was reported that they had indeed acquired this company. Even look at another example where he reported in 2016 that Goldman Sachs was gonna buy this Korean beauty company, and sure enough, within 1 month, it was reported that they did buy this company, Carver Korea. And so ultimately, I'm not saying that this guy is always accurate. Like I said, I've never met him, I can't speak for his integrity, but the main thing I was looking at is, does this guy have a lot to lose by lying? And just based on what I've seen, it seems like he has an extensive history of reporting, and he also has an extensive history of being right. Doesn't mean that he's gonna be right on this, but it sure looks pretty good. And finally, the last piece of information that I wanted to emphasize was that MX did not necessarily refute this information. And so what I mean by that is, when the announcement came out last Wednesday that Magnachip was indeed on the market, the very same day, a couple hours later, I think actually towards the end of the day, they gave out a press release talking about how they're going to be participating in these specific conferences. In addition, just based on YJ's behavior, the CEO of Magnachip, what I've observed is he's a very conservative guy. He seems to be a guy of a lot of ethics, and he likes to downplay things almost because he doesn't want to overpromise anything necessarily. Knowing that personality, he had every opportunity to come out that day and say, actually guys, this isn't true. We're not actually on the market. But instead, they didn't say anything at all. And so my big reason is, it seems like Magnachip had an opportunity to refute this information, especially based on the CEO's temperament, but they chose not to, which could indicate that an M&A is actually happening. So again, we look back, the reason why I say it's about 90-95% is because number 1, circumstantially, this is the best time to sell. Number 2, history has shown that this is typical Magnachip behavior. Number 3, the integrity of the reporter that reported seems to have a lot to lose if he were to lie in this situation. The fact that it was a very detailed report talking about the third phase. And number 4, Magnachip had an opportunity to refute, but they did not. Now let me reiterate something. This is a lot of good evidence, and that's why I'm confident saying 90-95%, but also this could be untrue. There is a possibility that he comes out on Thursday, Friday, Monday, or Tuesday and says, actually, these reports are not true at all, they were lies. But if it smells like a dog, it looks like a dog, and it sounds like a dog, it's most likely it's a dog and not a cat. And so even for me personally, you know, I'm counting down the days to Thursday, but I think at this point there's not really a lot more evidence that I can find to confirm or deny these reports, because to be quite frank, I think this is as close as we can get without YJ saying it is actually happening. And so just to re-emphasize, there is a certain amount of risk, but I feel safe because I've done a lot of due diligence on this, and it sure looks like the real thing. And this is the percentage of risk that as investors I think we just have to take on. And if you're not comfortable with this 5 to 10% risk, maybe it's better to look at bonds or CDs, right? And so based on all the reasons that I just mentioned, I do believe that there's a 90 to 95% chance that this is true. And finally, number 3, I want to talk about, in the off chance that this news isn't true, what happens to the stock? Well, I still believe that the stock is undervalued. That hasn't changed a lot. When I first reported on the stock, it wasn't about an acquisition play. It was purely about a stock that was vastly undervalued compared to its competitors. And again, I won't go into it too much. If you guys want to learn more about that, go ahead and watch my first video on this. But this is a company, to reiterate, has been waiting for OLED to boom for the last 15 years, and finally that day is now. And still they are undervalued at least 100% compared to their peers. And I do still believe that if they continue their current run rate, they are gonna see some significant gains. Okay guys, so that's pretty much it. Thanks so much for watching. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave it below. Feel free to also like, subscribe, whatever else that you're supposed to do. And make sure to follow me on Twitter. I'm gonna be updating on this throughout the whole entire process, and really wanna make sure you guys are the first to know. All right guys, talk to you soon.